Good morning, welcome to Morning Outlook. This is Kim speaking on Tuesday the 9th of June. So the yen has caught the bid. Now why here we may ask, and I was sort of looking at through different sources through this morning, and I cannot find an absolute reason why it's done quite so well as it has, but it has. And that's all that really matters, I guess. It's sometimes looking for the reasons to why something moves. It gives us a clue to whether it will continue moving in that direction or totally reverse, and obviously that's what I was looking for the signs of what's actually caused this. Well, it looks like I'm not alone in trying to find out, because there aren't a lot of true explanations that I can see at the moment. However, technically we ran into a brick wall, it looked like yesterday or last week. I'm looking at a weekly chart here on the yen. It pushed into its 200, it's 100 there on the weeklies, and you looking at the 500 on the dailies there then, and like a lot of these markets here, there were key points yesterday that were sort of reaching or getting very close to. Well, this certainly reached it, and we've seen as a bigger day down yesterday as we'd seen most of the previous week, and this morning we've seen a follow through of this. So is this going to continue? Ironically, the yen has become one of the least one of the weaker ones that in terms of sentiment. So the sentiment had, from the commitment traders report, had fallen away from the yen. So it's quite a surprise that this has actually come as it has, but either way, is it oversold here? Well, sure, it's got oversold. It's certainly moved a lot further than I expected, and technically, well, it's come back to price support there at the moment. And will we see a bounce here? Well, we are seeing a bounce is the answer. So I'm wary of what's caused this. There's no real, as I say, logic for it to have come down quite so far, but either way, we're seeing this sort of movement. So I'm just looking, we've probably got some divergence on the RSI there. MACD not so clear. In fact, this sort of last sell-off has been sort of pretty much in line with the movement, but has got divergence across some of these markets and may start pulling back. Okay, let's move back to the yen then, the euro even. We've just done the yen. So euro, I've come out the bigger time frames here. It's important today because, again, I mentioned this yesterday. The euro has gone into its weekly 200. There's a lot of points here of resistance. It's already shot through the 500 there previously last week. Coming back maybe to test the weekly pivot there. And that's really what I was hoping for yesterday, that it would just pull back into that and see if we got some sort of bounce from it. At the moment it's pulled back, but it's so slow. Yesterday it didn't even manage to catch a sort of a push up in the morning where the pound did. The euro's sitting there a little bit slower. Again, ironically, it looks like the sentiment of the bigger traders has been pushing money into the euro, certainly the futures. But for now, it's sitting there quite flat, just above the weekly pivot. Maybe if we can get a bounce off that, we'll see some action. In terms of today, pivot-wise, well, we've already through. It was such a pinched old day yesterday, very tight range, and as I say, already through today's pivot there and down into the S1. Just short now of that weekly pivot. So range wise, you can see it's just literally pretty rangy to yesterday's lows there. So key point, well, maybe it will just spike down a little bit there, but bounce up. We'll wait and see. It could be a bigger correction in store or there could be a bigger correction in store for the euro dollar. The pound again, I'm looking at the dailies here, but it's just come out one. Well, it's no surprise really. The weekly 100, daily 500 sitting just above price there. We have pitched up to today, already made a new high, but coming off those new highs as I'm speaking, and well, coming off new highs earlier this morning even, and running right the way back towards the daily pivot there. Now again, we've got, if this was to start selling off properly through the 50 MA, well, maybe we've got a correction point back to that weekly pivot, but at this stage it does look still in the sort of bullish mode, high lows, higher highs. I just stopped the video a second and adjusted this pivot. This daily pivot has been touched here. But it, as I say, does look soft. To break that 50 may seem further downside towards the S1, maybe even towards those lows yesterday morning. Okay, that's the pound. We've seen the yen, the Aussie dollar. Now the Aussie dollar's taking the sort of other side of this quite. I mean, look at this daily bar that we've seen already. It's sold off quite strongly. The Aussie's been the darling of the markets there. Yesterday it pushed up close towards the highs after quite a slow old day there. There was some divergence previously, but it's, in fact, you can see the overall divergence across that move. So there may be more downside to be had on the Aussie here. The weekly pivot is below, which again could be a target for it. But it's quite a drastic sell-off here. Equities have done pretty well in Australia. Maybe it's just a reflection of money moving from bonds, etc., into equities, and we're seeing that reflected on the price action here. But it's the Aussie was the strongest of the pairings. The yen was the weakest, and we've seen quite a turnaround at this point. And the Aussie certainly being sold as I speak here. Okay. I would, on that basis, by the way, look at some point for reversals of this, but maybe not trying to catch the knife at the moment. We'll just watch and see how it turns round. Canadian dollar. Canadian dollar is, in fact, again coming out to the weekly here, just into the weekly 50 yesterday. Just a bit of a bounce coming off that today, really. Also, some sort of reflection of a bounce. Maybe again, the weekly pivots could be a draw in this market. Seen a bit of a bounce. We've seen oil recover quite substantially which has certainly helped the Canadian dollar, and well, we're seeing this curling round sort of price action at the moment, and again solid old move there. So commodity currencies taking a bit of a hammering here with the US dollar strengthening against them at this stage. Okay, so Canadian dollar, and moving on to oil. So oil sold off yesterday. I was waiting, and I will wait for another opportunity on oil, maybe this afternoon if it starts picking up. I prefer to trade this post 2 o'clock. It's just as someone asked me yesterday why. It's just more liquidity in it, and it's just you get more solid moves generally from that sort of time frame. As we're sitting there at the moment, though, it does look soft. That again, weekly pivot seems like a potential target. S&Ps. Well, the S&Ps closed up well yesterday. It pushed up and closed off pretty much near the highs. Didn't really move very much. It seems to me that it's running out of steam at the moment, this move. That's not to say at some point, we were having this discussion yesterday, whether it would go back right the way back to where it was pre-COVID effectively. We saw this reaction coming in just actually, to be fair, before it. It's still a gap up there, look. This action coming in beforehand, but well, it may still continue pushing up. We'll see, but certainly shorter time frame. Okay, it's through the Asian session here, but we're just seeing sort of that little doges all the way through it. It's consolidated for large parts of yesterday. Always was going to be one of those days where it sort of sat in that range, and eventually it would break, possibly knock its way out, and it did later session. 6 o'clock there it started moving UK time and pushed up there, closing towards that 8 o'clock high. So pushed up well, consolidating again now. It's well, I'm just a bit suspicious of the move on it and whether it can contain this. If it can consolidate again today, hold its own, maybe it's just doing those sort of stepping stones, and then we'll get a push further up, but maybe a sign of weakness there. Okay, news-wise today we've got not a lot actually. I'm just looking at, in fact, there's the Bank of England member speaking at 3:30, nothing else. We do have the economic financial ministers meetings running all day today. May get some comments coming out of that, may give some positive or negative aspects to the euro. Really the big news is on tomorrow, so looking for the Fed funds rate, etc., and statement tomorrow evening. Okay, that's it for me. Have a great day. Bye for now.